The crime scene photos had been sealed in a manila envelope for 39 years. When Detective Sarah Chen finally opened them in the cold case unit's fluorescent-lit basement, her hands trembled. Not from the gruesome images she'd seen worse in her 15 years with Minneapolis PD. No. What made her hands shake was the date stamp in the corner. May 18, 1985. The same day her older sister had graduated from the same high school. She could have known this girl. The photograph showed a white ribbon, mud-stained and torn, caught on a tree branch near Lake Harriet. Lisa Anderson's mother had tied it in her daughter's hair that morning before the spring dance. By midnight, it would be the only trace of Lisa they could find. By dawn, it would be evidence in a murder investigation that would haunt Minneapolis for nearly 4 decades. But what Detective Chen didn't know what nobody could have known in that moment was that the killer had been watching the news coverage of the case's reopening, and he was terrified. Lisa Anderson stood in front of her bedroom mirror, trying to decide between the blue dress and the pink one. Outside her window, the Minnesota spring was finally showing its face after a brutal winter. Lilac bushes bloomed in the yard. Robins had returned. Everything felt possible. The pink one, her mother Carol said from the doorway. It brings out your eyes. Lisa was 17 and unstoppable. Strata student. Track team captain. Already accepted to the University of Minnesota with a partial scholarship. She had her father's determination and her mother's kindness. Gosh, and everyone who knew her said the same thing. That girl's going places. The spring dance was a rite of passage at Central High School. Lisa had been looking forward to it for months. Her boyfriend, Tommy Richards, would pick her up at 7. They'd dance until 11. She'd be home by midnight. That was the rule. Carol Anderson watched her daughter spray perfume on her wrists. "You look beautiful, honey." "Thanks, Mom." Lisa smiled. That bright, easy smile that would later appear on 1,000 missing person posters. "I'll be careful. I promise." It was the last conversation they would ever have. The clock in the Anderson living room ticked past 12:15 a.m. Carol sat on the couch, pretending to read a magazine. Her husband Robert had already called Tommy's house twice. No answer. By 12:45, Carol's hands had started shaking. By 1:30 a.m., Robert was in the car, driving the route between the school and their house, scanning the dark streets for any sign of his daughter's blue jacket. At 2:47 a.m., Carol called the police. The dispatcher's voice was professional, but not particularly concerned. Teenage girl missed curfew after a school dance. Probably lost track of time. Give it until morning. Most of them come home. But Lisa Anderson wasn't most teenagers. At 6:15 a.m., when the sun rose over Minneapolis and Lisa still hadn't returned, hadn't called, hadn't left a note, the Andersons knew. Parents always know. Something terrible had happened to their daughter. What they didn't know, what they couldn't imagine in their worst nightmares, was that Lisa was already dead. Had been for hours. And her body was less than 3 miles from their house, hidden in the tall grass near Lake Harriet's southeastern shore, where joggers would find her in exactly 43 minutes. Margaret Fletcher jogged this route every Sunday morning. 6 miles around Lake Harriet, rain or shine. She knew every tree, every bench, every curve in the path. So when she saw something white in the grass, something that didn't belong, her brain registered it immediately. At first, she thought it was a mannequin, some kind of prank. Then she saw the hand, fingers curled slightly, nails painted pink. And her mind went blank with horror. She was still screaming when the first patrol car arrived. The crime scene was chaos. Officers cordoned off a 100-yard radius. Detective James Morrison, a 20-year veteran with deep-set eyes and permanent worry lines, arrived at 7:20 a.m. He'd been halfway through his coffee when the call came. One look at the victim told him this wasn't random. Lisa Anderson lay in the grass, her pink dress torn at the shoulder. Ligature marks circled her neck-deep, angry bruises that told the story of her last moments. Her shoes were missing. Her purse was gone. But her jewelry, a simple gold necklace and small earrings, remained. Not a robbery then. Morrison crouched beside the body, careful not to disturb any evidence. The medical examiner, Dr. Harold Chen, was already taking preliminary notes. "Strangulation," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Manual first, then he used something, maybe a belt or rope. She fought him. See the defensive wounds on her hands." Morrison did. Scratches on her palms. Broken nails. Lisa Anderson had fought for her life. Time of death. Based on liver temp and rigor, I'd say between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Morrison stood, surveying the scene. Lake Harriet stretched out before them, peaceful in the morning light. Families would come here later to feed ducks and ride bikes. They had no idea they were standing near a murder scene. "Find me her shoes," Morrison told the officers combing the grass. "Find me her purse. And find me whoever did this." But finding the killer would prove far more difficult than anyone imagined. The Anderson house was full of people who didn't belong there. Police officers, family friends, neighbors bringing casseroles as if food could fill the void that had opened in the center of their lives. Carol Anderson sat on the same couch where she'd waited for Lisa to come home, but now she wasn't waiting for anything. The waiting was over. The knowing had begun. Detective Morrison sat across from her, his notebook open on his knee. He hated this part. The questions that needed asking when grief was still raw and fresh. "Mrs. Anderson, I need you to think back to yesterday morning. Did Lisa seem worried about anything? Anyone bothering her at school?" Carol's eyes were red-rimmed but dry. She'd cried so much there was nothing left. No, she was excited, happy. She'd just found out she made the honor roll again. And her boyfriend, Tommy Richards. How was their relationship? Good. Tommy's a sweet boy. He'd never, her voice broke. He'd never hurt Lisa. Morrison made a note anyway. Statistics didn't lie. When a young woman was murdered, look at the boyfriend first. But Tommy Richards had an alibi. He dropped Lisa off at the school gym at 7:15 p.m. Multiple witnesses saw them arrive together. Multiple witnesses saw Tommy dancing, laughing, having a good time. And at 10:30 p.m., when Lisa said she needed some air and walked outside, Tommy had been in the middle of the gym, visible to at least 20 people. He'd waited for her to come back. When she didn't, he'd assumed she'd gotten a ride home with friends. It was the last assumption he'd ever make so carelessly. The forensics team worked the Lake Harriet crime scene for 2 days. They found Lisa's left shoe, brown leather, flat, 30 feet from her body. Her purse turned up in a drainage ditch, empty except for a tube of lipstick and a crumpled receipt from a convenience store. What they didn't find was more important: no murder weapon, no witnesses, no obvious suspect. But they did find something that in 1985 seemed almost useless, but 39 years later would crack the case wide open. Under Lisa's fingernails, the medical examiner recovered tissue samples. She'd scratched her attacker hard, deep enough to draw blood. The lab preserved the samples, documented them, filed them away in an evidence locker. DNA analysis was still in its infancy in 1985. The technology existed, but it was expensive, complicated, and rarely used in criminal investigations. The Minneapolis Police Department didn't have the resources or the expertise. The tissue samples sat in storage. Waiting for science to catch up, Detective Morrison spent days at Central High School, interviewing students, teachers, staff. Everyone loved Lisa. She tutored struggling students. She volunteered at the library. She'd organized a fundraiser for the music program. Lisa Anderson was the kind of girl who made the world better just by being in it. And now she was gone. Did you notice anyone paying unusual attention to Lisa? Morrison asked the vice principal, a thin woman named Eleanor Ward. She was popular, Ward said carefully, but not in a flashy way. She was just ... good. You know? The kind of kid who actually cares. Anyone ever make her uncomfortable? Teacher, student, anyone? Ward thought for a moment. There was. Look, I don't want to cast aspersions, but there was a teacher at Jefferson High, that's the school 3 miles west, who came to a few of our track meets. I saw him watching Lisa run. It seemed a bit odd since he didn't have a kid on our team. Morrison's pen stopped moving. Name: William Thompson. Science teacher. I only remember because my nephew had him for chemistry. Morrison added the name to his growing list of people to interview. But William Thompson would prove to be very good at hiding in plain sight. More than 300 people attended. Lisa Anderson's funeral. The church overflowed. Students wore pink ribbons in their hair. The choir sang Amazing Grace, and Carol Anderson sobbed so hard she couldn't stand. Robert Anderson delivered the eulogy. His voice shook but never broke. Our daughter had 17 years. She should have had 70. She should have graduated college, gotten married, had children of her own. Someone stole that from her. Someone stole that from all of us. Detective Morrison stood in the back, scanning the crowd. He'd learned early in his career that killers often attended their victims' funerals. Some sick compulsion drew them back to witness the grief they'd caused. He photographed everyone entering and leaving. Later, he'd match faces to names, run background checks, look for anything suspicious. In the third row, slightly apart from the other mourners, sat William Thompson. He wore a dark suit and an appropriately somber expression. When Lisa's mother wept, he dabbed at his own eyes with a handkerchief. When the casket was carried out, he bowed his head respectfully. No one noticed him. No one thought it strange that a teacher from a neighboring school would attend. Teachers cared about students. It was normal, but what wasn't normal, what no one could see, were the scratches on William Thompson's forearms, hidden beneath his long sleeves. Deep, angry scratches that were just beginning to heal. Weeks turned to months. Detective Morrison followed every lead, interviewed every person, even tangentially connected to Lisa Anderson. He worked 80-hour days. His wife begged him to come home. His captain warned him about burnout, but he couldn't let it go. The problem was simple and insurmountable. No physical evidence connecting anyone to the crime. No witnesses who saw Lisa leave the school dance. No murder weapon. No clear motive. The tissue samples under Lisa's nails were their best hope, but the DNA technology simply wasn't there yet. The samples existed, preserved, and cataloged, but might as well have been written in a language no one could read. By December 1985, the leads had dried up. The tip line went quiet. The media moved on to other stories. Lisa Anderson became another name in a file, another unsolved case in a drawer that was getting too full. Morrison never forgot. Even after he retired in 2003, he kept copies of the case files at home. Sometimes, late at night, he'd take them out and read through everything again, hoping something new would jump out at him. But the answer wasn't in the old files. The answer was waiting in technology that hadn't been invented yet. The Anderson house became a mausoleum. Carol couldn't bring herself to change Lisa's room. The pink dress still hung in the closet, the one Lisa hadn't chosen that night. The books on her desk remained open to the pages she'd last read. Her track trophies gathered dust on the shelf. Robert threw himself into work. Anything to avoid thinking about the daughter who should be calling them from her college dorm, telling them about classes and friends and all the ordinary miracles of growing up. They aged decades and months. Carol's hair went white. Robert developed an ulcer. They moved through life like ghosts, present but not really there. Every year on Lisa's birthday, they visited the cemetery. Every year on the anniversary of her death, they lit a candle in the window. They were waiting for something: justice, closure, understanding, but it never came. "I dream about her," Carol told her sister one afternoon in 1987. "She's always just out of reach. I can see her, but I can't get to her. She's trying to tell me something, but I can't hear." "Maybe she's at peace," her sister offered. "How can she be at peace when he's still out there?" Carol's voice hardened. "Whoever did this is still out there, living his life, while my baby is in the ground." She was right. While the Andersons grieved, while their lives crumbled, William Thompson was teaching chemistry at Jefferson High School. He was coaching the science club. He was attending parent-teacher conferences and grading papers and living a completely normal life. The scratches on his arms had healed without scars. The memory of that night near Lake Harriet had faded like an old photograph, the details becoming less sharp with time. He'd gotten away with it. Or so he thought. Time moved forward because it had no choice. The 1980s became the 1990s. The 1990s became the 2000s. The world changed. Technology exploded. DNA analysis went from experimental to routine, but Lisa Anderson's case stayed cold. Detective Morrison retired. Carol Anderson died of cancer in 2008, never knowing who killed her daughter. Robert Anderson followed her 2 years later, his heart finally giving out under the weight of 25 years of grief. Lisa's case file was transferred to the cold case unit, where it sat alongside hundreds of others, unsolved, unpunished, nearly forgotten. But not by everyone. In 2015, a young detective named Sarah Chen joined the Minneapolis cold case unit, fresh out of major crimes. She was eager and idealistic and believed that every victim deserved justice, no matter how long it took. She was also Detective Morrison's goddaughter. She'd grown up hearing about Lisa Anderson, about the case that got away, about the scratches under fingernails that held a secret no one could unlock. Until now, October 2023, Detective Chen sat in the evidence room, surrounded by boxes that smelled of mildew and old paper. The Lisa Anderson case file was thicker than she'd expected. Morrison had been thorough. Obsessive even? She read every page, studied every photograph, traced the investigation's dead ends and false leads. And then she got to the forensics report. Tissue samples, preserved. Still in evidence storage, Chen's heart started racing. She grabbed her phone and called the lab. "I need to know if we still have biological samples from case number 854471. And if we do, I need them processed for DNA." The lab tech sounded doubtful. "Samples from 1985. That's nearly 40 years old. The degradation, can you try?" A pause. "I can try." 3 weeks later, Chen got the call. They'd extracted viable DNA from the tissue under Lisa's fingernails. Male DNA, unknown subject. No match in CODIS, the FBI's criminal DNA database. Dead end. Except it wasn't. Not anymore, because in 2024, a new tool had revolutionized cold case investigations: genetic genealogy. The same technology people use to find their ancestors, to build family trees, to connect with distant relatives they never knew existed. That technology could also identify killers. Chen uploaded the DNA profile to GEDmatch, a public genealogy database. She wasn't looking for a direct match. She was looking for relatives. Third cousins. Fourth cousins. Anyone who shared enough DNA to build a family tree backward, branch by branch. Until she found the person who'd killed Lisa Anderson, it took 3 months of painstaking work. 3 months of building family trees, contacting relatives, ruling out suspects. Chen worked with a genetic genealogist named Patricia Rivera, a former librarian who'd found her calling in, helping solve cold cases. "We're looking for someone male, likely between 55 and 75 years old now," Rivera explained over Zoom. "Based on the family trees, we've narrowed it down to 3 potential suspects in the Minneapolis area." Chen pulled up the names. Her hands were shaking again, just like they had when she first opened the case file. Thomas Mendez, insurance salesman. No criminal record, James Hartley. Retired postal worker. Clean background, William Thompson. Retired high school science teacher. Thompson. The name triggered something in Chen's memory. She flipped through the original case files until she found it. Eleanor Ward's statement about a teacher from Jefferson High who'd watched Lisa run at track meets. William Thompson. "That's him," Chen whispered. "That's our guy." But knowing and proving were 2 different things. Chen needed more than genetic genealogy. She needed evidence that would hold up in court. Evidence that would convince a jury beyond reasonable doubt. She started with Thompson's background. Born in 1962, graduated from University of Minnesota with a degree in chemistry. Started teaching at Jefferson High School in 1983. Retired in 2010. Never married. No children. Lived alone in a small house in South Minneapolis. No criminal record. Not even a parking ticket. On paper, William Thompson was invisible, unremarkable, the kind of man who could disappear in a crowd. Chen dug deeper. She contacted former students, colleagues, administrators. Most remembered him as quiet, competent, occasionally awkward. A bit too interested in the female students, maybe, but nothing actionable. Nothing that raised red flags until she talked to Amanda Briggs, who'd been a student at Jefferson High in 1985. "Mr. Thompson gave me the creeps," Amanda said over the phone. She was in her 50s now, with kids of her own. "He'd find excuses to keep me after class. Once he put his hand on my shoulder, and I just... I knew something was wrong. I switched out of his class. Did you report it?" This was 1985. Who would have believed me? He was a teacher. Teachers were trusted. Chen added Amanda's statement to her growing file. Then she made a crucial decision. She needed Thompson's DNA. A direct sample to compare against the evidence from under Lisa Anderson's nails. Getting it legally was tricky. They needed probable cause for a warrant, and genetic genealogy alone wasn't enough. So Chen did what detectives have done for decades. She went fishing for 3 weeks. Detective Chen and her partner, Marcus Williams, followed William Thompson. They documented his routines, his habits, his movements. Every Tuesday, he went to the grocery store. Every Thursday, he volunteered at the library. On Saturdays, he met with a group of retired teachers for coffee at a diner on Nicollet Avenue. He looked like someone's grandfather, harmless, gentle. The kind of man you'd trust to watch your house while you were on vacation. But Chen saw something else. The way his eyes followed women in the grocery store. The lingering stares. The fact that he volunteered at the library's teen section, not the adult section. "He's a predator," Williams said, quietly as they watched Thompson leave the library. "He's just learned to control it." On week 3, Thompson did something unexpected. He drove to Lake Harriet, parked near the southeastern shore, sat in his car for 20 minutes, staring at the spot where Lisa's body had been found 39 years ago. Then he got out, walked to the exact location, and stood there. Just stood there, hands in his pockets, like he was visiting a grave. Chen filmed everything from a distance. When Thompson finally left, she walked to the spot where he'd been standing. There, half hidden in the grass, was a single wilted flower. He'd been visiting the crime scene. For years, probably, coming back to relive what he'd done. The next day, Chen got her warrant. March 15, 2024, 6:47 a.m. William Thompson was making coffee when the police knocked on his door. He answered in a bathrobe, his gray hair uncombed, confusion written across his face. "Yes. Can I help you?" Detective Chen held up her badge. "William Thompson." "I'm Detective Chen, Minneapolis Police Department. We have a warrant to collect a DNA sample." Thompson's face went still. Not surprised, not confused, just ... Still, like a mask had slipped into place. DNA. What for? The murder of Lisa Anderson in 1985. For just a moment, maybe 2 seconds. Maybe less, something flickered in Thompson's eyes. Recognition, fear. Then the mask was back. "I don't know anyone named Lisa Anderson." "No." "You attended her funeral." May 23, 1985. Central Presbyterian Church. "You sat in the 3rd row." Thompson's jaw tightened. "I don't recall." The DNA swab took 30 seconds. Thompson submitted without protest, without calling a lawyer. Because calling a lawyer would make him look guilty, and he still believed he could talk. His way out of this, he was wrong. The lab fast-tracked the comparison. Technology that didn't exist in 1985, that couldn't have existed. That would have seemed like magic to Detective Morrison. That technology now gave them an answer in 72 hours. The DNA from William Thompson's cheek swab matched the DNA from under Lisa Anderson's fingernails. 1 in 8.7 trillion chance of error. Chen stared at the report in her hands. After 39 years, they had him. The man who'd stolen Lisa Anderson's future, who'd devastated her family, who'd walked free for decades, they finally had him. She called the prosecutor's office. "We've got a match. We're making the arrest." William Thompson sat in an interview room B, handcuffed to the table, and said absolutely nothing. Detective Chen had seen this before. Suspects who thought silence was their best defense. Sometimes they were right, but not when the evidence was this strong. "We have your DNA, Mr. Thompson, under Lisa Anderson's fingernails. She scratched you when you strangled her on May 17, 1985. You killed her, and now we can prove it." Thompson stared at the wall. "You were at her funeral. Why? Was it guilt? Did you want to see what you'd done to her family?" Silence. "We talked to your former students. They remember you. How you'd watch them. How you made them uncomfortable. How many others were there, Mr. Thompson? How many girls did you hurt before Lisa? How many after?" Still nothing. Chen leaned forward. Lisa was 17 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. College, career, marriage, children. You took all of that away in what, 15 minutes? 20? Was it worth it? Thompson's eye twitched. Just barely. But Chen saw it. "You've had 39 years of freedom. 39 years while Lisa's mother died without ever knowing who killed her daughter. While her father's heart literally broke from grief. You've got to live your life. You've got to retire, to travel, to wake up every morning and make coffee and pretend you're normal." She slid a photograph across the table. Lisa Anderson in her track uniform, smiling, alive, beautiful. "But you're not normal. You're a murderer. And now everyone's going to know." Thompson looked at the photograph. His mask finally cracked. "I want a lawyer," he whispered. The arrest made national news. Minneapolis cold case solved after 39 years through DNA genealogy screamed the headlines. Every major network sent reporters. The story had everything. A young victim, decades of mystery, cutting-edge science. A predator caught at last. Lisa Anderson's face was everywhere again. The same photographs from 1985. The same story of the girl who went to a dance and never came home. But this time, there was an ending. This time, there was justice. The courthouse was mobbed during Thompson's arraignment. He shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit, looking small and old and harmless. His lawyer entered a plea of not guilty. Outside, a handful of Thompson's former students had gathered. Amanda Briggs was there, along with 3 other women, who'd never reported their uncomfortable interactions with their chemistry teacher because it was the 1980s, and who would have believed them? "He made me feel dirty," one woman told reporters. "Every time he looked at me, I wanted to disappear. And when I heard about Lisa Anderson, I wondered, ... I wondered if it could have been me." The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Catherine Reynolds, had been waiting for a case like this her entire career. A case where justice wasn't just about law, but about giving voice to the dead. She and Detective Chen worked 18-hour days building their case. The DNA evidence was bulletproof, but they needed more. They needed to show the jury who William Thompson really was. They needed to make Lisa Anderson real to them. They found Lisa's diary, preserved by her parents, never read. In it, Lisa wrote about her dreams, her friends, her fears. On April 30th, 1985, 17 days before her death, she wrote, "Saw that weird teacher from Jefferson at our track meet again. Today. He was just standing there, watching. Tommy says I'm paranoid, but something about him makes my skin crawl. I wish he'd stop coming." Lisa had known. Some instinct, some sixth sense had warned her. But 17-year-olds don't accuse teachers of being creepy without evidence. They just feel uncomfortable and try to avoid it. Reynolds added the diary entry to her evidence. The jury needed to hear Lisa's own voice. They also tracked down more of Thompson's past. Former colleagues remembered him requesting extra-duty supervising detention, requesting access to student files, volunteering to chaperone dances and field trips. He was always around teenage girls, one retired principal said. "We joked about him being lonely, needing a wife. It never occurred to us that he was ... hunting." Thompson's defense attorney, Michael Keller, was fighting an uphill battle, and he knew it. The DNA evidence was damning. But he tried his strategy, attacked the genetic genealogy, argued that it was unproven, unreliable, a violation of privacy, argued that the DNA under Lisa's fingernails could have gotten there innocently, argued that 39 years was too long, that memories fade. That evidence degrades. The state wants you to convict my client based on a science that didn't even exist when this alleged crime occurred. Keller told the judge during a pretrial hearing, "Genetic genealogy is not reliable. It's not accurate, and it violates the constitutional rights of millions of Americans who put their DNA in those databases expecting privacy." Judge Margaret O'Brien listened patiently. Then she ruled, "The DNA evidence is admissible. Genetic genealogy is an investigative tool, not evidence itself. The evidence is the DNA match between the defendant and the material under the victim's fingernails. That's solid science, counselor." Motion denied. Keller tried again. "Your Honor, even if the DNA is admissible, there's no evidence of how it got there. My client could have shaken hands with Miss Anderson, could have given her directions. There are innocent explanations. Present them at trial, Mr. Keller. But this case is going forward." September 2024. The courtroom was packed. Lisa Anderson's surviving relatives filled 2 rows. Tommy Richards, now in his 50s and fighting back tears, sat with his wife. Former classmates who'd never forgotten Lisa came to bear witness. William Thompson sat at the defense table, expressionless. He'd aged visibly since his arrest. His hair had thinned. His face was gaunt. He looked like what he was, a 72-year-old man facing life in prison. Prosecutor Reynolds stood for her opening statement. Lisa Anderson was 17 years old when she died. 17, she was a daughter, a student, a friend. She was planning to study engineering at the University of Minnesota. She wanted to design bridges. She wanted to help people. On May 17, 1985, she went to a school dance. She was wearing a pink dress. Her mother had tied a white ribbon in her hair. She was laughing. She was happy. She was young and full of life and promise. And then she met William Thompson. Reynolds turned to face the jury directly. The defendant strangled Lisa Anderson near Lake Harriet. She fought him. She scratched his arms, his hands, trying to break free. In doing so, she left us a gift evidence we couldn't use in 1985, but we can use now. Her fingernails contain the defendant's DNA. Science has finally caught up with his crime. For 39 years, William Thompson has been free. He taught school. He went to the grocery store. He lived a normal life while Lisa's parents died of broken hearts. But Lisa never gave up, even in death. She held on to the evidence we needed to find her killer. And now, finally, we can give her justice. The courtroom was silent, except for quiet sobbing. The prosecution called witness after witness, building their case piece by piece. Dr. Patricia Rivera, the genetic genealogist, explained how she'd used family trees to narrow down suspects. DNA doesn't lie, she said. The person who hurt Lisa Anderson is a descendant of this family line. William Thompson is a member of that family, and his DNA is an exact match to the evidence. The defense tried to shake her testimony. Isn't it possible you made a mistake? Charted the wrong family? No, I triple-checked everything. The match is conclusive. Detective Chen testified about Thompson's behavior. His visits to Lake Harriet. His attendance at Lisa's funeral. The former students who reported feeling uncomfortable around him. He was obsessed with teenage girls, Chen said firmly. He had access to them. He had opportunity. And now we know he had motive. The medical examiner who'd performed Lisa's autopsy, now in his 80s and retired, returned to testify about the tissue under her fingernails. I knew it was significant. Dr. Harold Chen said, I knew someday it might help us catch the killer. I just didn't know it would take 39 years. Then came the emotional testimony. Tommy Richards took the stand, his voice breaking as he described the last time he saw Lisa. She said she needed air. The gym was hot and crowded. She said she'd be right back. I should have gone with her. I should have. He couldn't finish, Mr. Richards. Reynolds said gently, this wasn't your fault. The only person responsible for Lisa's death is sitting right there. She pointed at Thompson. Did you see the defendant at the school dance that night? No, I don't think so. But there were chaperones, teachers, parents, people coming and going. People like William Thompson, who'd been watching Lisa for months. The most powerful moment of the trial came when Reynolds introduced Lisa's diary. She read the entry about the weird teacher from Jefferson aloud in court. The jury leaned forward. This was Lisa's voice, speaking from beyond the grave, warning them about the man she'd feared. Reynolds held the diary up. Lisa Anderson knew. She sensed the danger. But she was 17 years old, and we live in a world where 17-year-old girls are taught not to make accusations without proof. We live in a world where calling a teacher creepy gets you labeled as dramatic or paranoid. So Lisa said nothing. She just tried to avoid him. But on May 17, 1985, she couldn't avoid him anymore. He followed her from that dance. He cornered her. And he killed her to silence her. Thompson's face remained blank, but his hands were clenched so tightly under the table that his knuckles were white. Michael Keller did his best. He called character witnesses who testified that Thompson had been a good teacher, a quiet neighbor, a law-abiding citizen for 72 years. One mistake doesn't define a man's entire life, Keller argued, and we're not even sure it was a mistake. We're basing this entire case on DNA that could have gotten under Miss Anderson's nails a dozen different ways. But when Keller put Thompson on the stand to explain how his DNA might have innocently ended up under a murdered girl's fingernails, it backfired spectacularly. "Did you ever meet Lisa Anderson?" Keller asked. "No. Never shook her hand. Never spoke to her." "Never? Then how do you explain your DNA under her fingernails?" Thompson's jaw worked. "I can't. It's there, must be some mistake. But Dr. Rivera testified that the match is conclusive. 1 in 8.7 trillion. Then the test is wrong." Prosecutor Reynolds stood for cross-examination. Her voice was soft but lethal. "Mr. Thompson, you testified that you never met Lisa Anderson. Is that correct?" "Yes, never spoke to her." "Correct?" Reynolds pulled out a photograph. "This is from Lisa Anderson's funeral. That's you in the third row. Why would you attend the funeral of someone you never met?" Thompson's face went white. "I don't remember that." "You don't remember attending the funeral of a murdered teenager? A funeral that made the front page of every Minneapolis newspaper. A funeral attended by over 300 people. It was a long time ago, 30-9 years. The same amount of time you've been free while Lisa's been dead. Mr. Thompson, isn't it true that you went to that funeral to see the results of what you'd done? To watch her family suffer? No. Isn't it true that you've been visiting Lake Harriet, the exact spot where you killed her for decades? I like that park. I walk there sometimes, and you just happened to stop at the precise location where Lisa's body was found. You just happened to leave flowers there." Thompson said nothing. "You killed Lisa Anderson. You strangled her. She fought back and scratched you, and you've been living with that secret for 39 years. Isn't that the truth?" "No, but everyone in that courtroom could see he was lying. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. Now it came down to this. One final chance for each side to make their case." Keller went first. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a tragedy. Lisa Anderson's death was a tragedy. But compounding that tragedy by convicting an innocent man based on questionable science doesn't bring her back. It doesn't bring justice. It just creates another victim. The state wants you to believe that genetic genealogy is perfect. It's not. The state wants you to believe that DNA can't be transferred innocently. It can be. The state wants you to believe that a quiet, retired teacher is a monster. But where's the evidence of that? Where are the other victims? If William Thompson was really a predator, why is there only one alleged crime? You must have reasonable doubt. You must." Then it was Reynolds' turn. She stood in front of the jury box and spoke directly to them. "Lisa Anderson was murdered on May 17, 1985. That's a fact. Someone strangled her near Lake Harriet. Someone left her body in the grass for joggers to find. Someone destroyed her family and stole her future. That someone was William Thompson. We know this because Lisa fought back. She scratched him. She left his DNA under her fingernails, not transferred innocently, not from a handshake or a casual encounter. This was epithelial tissue skin cell-storn from his body by her. Fingernails as she fought for her life. The defense wants you to doubt the science. But this is the same science that's exonerated innocent people. The same science that solved hundreds of cold cases. The same science that's so accurate, it's admissible in every court in America. William Thompson's DNA is under Lisa Anderson's fingernails because he killed her. There is no other explanation. For 39 years, Lisa's voice has been silenced. But today, through science, through perseverance, through justice, she speaks. And she tells us he did this. William Thompson did this. Don't let him steal one more day of freedom. Give Lisa the justice she's been waiting for since 1985. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. The courtroom held its breath as the jury filed back in. Thompson sat rigid in his chair. Detective Chen closed her eyes and whispered a prayer she didn't quite believe in. Judge O'Brien looked at the jury foreman. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor. On the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find?" The foreman's voice was clear and strong. "We find the defendant, William Thompson, guilty." The courtroom erupted. Tommy Richards dropped his face into his hands and sobbed. Former classmates embraced. Detective Chen felt tears streaming down her face. William Thompson showed no emotion. He simply stared straight ahead as the judge thanked the jury and set a sentencing date for 3 weeks later. But as the bailiffs led him away, he turned and looked directly at Detective Chen. And for just a moment, she saw the hatred, the rage, the evil he'd kept hidden for 7 decades. Then he was gone. October 15th, 2024. 3 weeks after the verdict. The courtroom was packed again for sentencing. Judge O'Brien addressed Thompson directly. "Mr. Thompson, you have been found guilty of murdering Lisa Anderson. This court has heard overwhelming evidence of your guilt. The jury has spoken. Now I will speak. Lisa Anderson was 17 years old. She had dreams, plans, a future. You took all of that away. And then you lived freely for 39 years while her family suffered. There is no sentence I can impose that will bring Lisa back. There is no punishment that will truly balance the scales of justice. But I can ensure you never hurt anyone else. I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. May you spend your remaining years contemplating what you've done." Thompson was led away. His life as a free man was over. A week after sentencing, Detective Chen visited Lake Harriet. She stood at the spot where Lisa's body had been found and tried to imagine that night in 1985. The fear, the struggle. The moment when Lisa realized she wasn't going to make it home. Then she drove to Lakewood Cemetery where Lisa was buried next to her parents. Someone had left fresh flowers, pink roses. Chen knelt by the headstone. Lisa Marie Anderson, 1967 to 1985. Beloved daughter. Gone too soon. We got him, Chen said quietly. It took 39 years, but we got him. You held on to that evidence. You never let go. You made sure we could find him. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere, a bird sang. Chen stood, wiped her eyes, and walked back to her car. There were other cold cases waiting. Other victims waiting for justice. Other families waiting for answers. Lisa Anderson's case was closed, but the work continued. The conviction of William Thompson sent shockwaves through the forensic community. Genetic genealogy had proven itself as a legitimate tool for solving cold cases. Police departments across the country began reviewing their old evidence, looking for cases with preserved DNA that could be run through genealogy databases. Within 6 months, 3 more cold cases in Minnesota alone were solved using the same technique. Within a year, that number grew to 17. The technology that had seemed like science fiction in 1985 was now standard procedure. DNA that had sat in evidence lockers for decades was finally being read. Finally telling its stories. Finally pointing to the truth. And every solved case gave another family the closure they'd been waiting for. On what would have been Lisa's 60th birthday, her former classmates organized a memorial at Central High School. They'd established a scholarship in her name. The Lisa Anderson Memorial Scholarship, awarded annually to a female student pursuing engineering. Tommy Richards spoke at the ceremony. His voice was steady now, strengthened by years of healing. Lisa should be here. She should be celebrating her 60th birthday with grandchildren climbing on her lap. She should have designed the bridges she dreamed about. She should have lived But because of one evil man, she didn't get that chance. For 39 years, we didn't know who took her from us. We lived with that uncertainty, that frustration, that pain. Now we know. Now we have justice. It doesn't bring Lisa back. Nothing can. But it means something. It means her death wasn't forgotten. It means someone cared enough to keep searching. Detective Chen, if you're hearing, I think you are. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for giving us answers. Chen was in the back row, crying quietly. She hadn't planned to come, but she couldn't stay away. These people, Lisa's people, had become part of her life too. After the ceremony, a woman approached her. Late 50s, gray hair, kind eyes. "You don't know me," the woman said. "But I was Lisa's lab partner in chemistry. She used to help me with homework. She was patient and funny and so smart. I want you to know that she was real. She wasn't just a case file. She was a real person, and she mattered." "I know," Chen said. "She still matters." 6 months into his sentence, William Thompson agreed to an interview with a true crime journalist. He'd refused dozens of requests, but something about this journalist's letter had gotten through. Or maybe he just wanted to talk, to tell his side, to try to make sense of what couldn't be made sense of. They met in the prison's interview room. Thompson looked smaller than he had in court. Prison had a way of shrinking people. "Why did you agree to this interview?" The journalist asked. Thompson was quiet for a long moment. "Because I want people to understand." "Understand what?" "That I'm not a monster." "What happened to Lisa?" "It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did happen." "You killed her." "I didn't mean to. She was so beautiful. And I just wanted to talk to her. But she ran. And I panicked, and ... double quotes, he trailed off. "You strangled her." "I didn't know what else to do. She was screaming. I just wanted her to be quiet." The journalist's voice was cold. "So, you killed her. And then you went to her funeral. You visited the crime scene for decades. You lived your life while her family suffered." Thompson looked away. "I thought about turning myself in. Every day for 39 years, I thought about it. But I was scared. And then so much time had passed, I thought maybe I'd gotten away with it. I thought maybe you thought you were smarter than science." "Oh, yes." "You weren't." Thompson finally met the journalist's eyes. "No, I wasn't. Lisa wouldn't let me get away with it. Even in death, she made sure I'd be caught." The interview was published 3 months later. It changed nothing. William Thompson would die in prison, and Lisa Anderson would still be gone. It was a reminder: the dead never forget. And we should not either. Detective Sarah Chen retired from the Minneapolis Police Department in 2029. During her career, she solved 17 cold cases. But Lisa Anderson's case was the one she always remembered, the one that showed her why her work mattered. On her last day, she went to Lakewood Cemetery one final time. The headstone was old now, worn down by 44 Minnesota winters. But the words were still clear. Lisa Marie Anderson. 1967 to 1985. Beloved daughter. Gone too soon. Chen placed a single pink rose on the grave. "Your case was my first," she said softly. "It taught me that justice takes time. It waits. It never gives up. Just like you did not give up, even when." Her voice broke. "Even after all these years, the pain was still there. You kept that evidence safe. You helped us find him. You never stopped fighting." The sun began to set, and long shadows crossed the cemetery. A church bell rang in the distance. Life went on, as it always does. But in this quiet place, a 17-year-old girl who had lost her future finally got something else: justice. And that had to be enough. Lisa Anderson's story is one of many. Across America, cold cases still wait in file cabinets and evidence rooms. Victims' voices are silent but not forgotten. Families keep waiting for answers. Detectives carry the weight of unsolved cases even after they retire. But technology keeps improving. DNA testing gets better. Genetic genealogy opens new paths. And little by little, one case at a time, justice catches up. In 2024, genetic genealogy helped solve more than 200 cold cases across the country. That means 200 families finally got answers. 200 killers who thought they'd escaped learned that science never forgets. Lisa Anderson held onto her killer's DNA under her fingernails for 39 years. For 39 years, that evidence sat in storage, waiting to tell her story. She could not testify in court. She could not name her attacker. She could not tell anyone what happened that night near Lake Harriet. But she did not have to. Her body told the story. Her fingernails kept the proof. And when science advanced enough to find it, her evidence spoke louder than any witness could. William Thompson is 82 years old now. He will die in prison, likely within the next few years. He will never be free again. He will never see another sunrise as a free man. He will never teach again, attend another funeral, or visit Lake Harriet to remember his crime. And somewhere, wherever she is now, Lisa Anderson knows that justice finally found her. It took 39 years, but it found her. Some debts never disappear. Some crimes never fade. Some victims never let go. Lisa Anderson never let go. Because of her final act of courage, scratching her killer hard enough to leave his DNA under her nails. She solved her own murder. From beyond the grave, she pointed to William Thompson and said, "Him, he did this." And finally, after 39 long years, someone listened in memory of all cold case victims. Justice delayed is not justice denied. This documentary is a reminder that new forensic technology can still bring justice even after many years. As of 2024, there are more than 250,000 unsolved murder cases in the United States. Each one represents a life cut short, a family still waiting, and a killer who believes they have gotten away with it. But the victims do not forget. The evidence remains. And justice, no matter how long it takes, never gives up. If you have information about any unsolved case, please contact your local police. Your tip could be the key to bringing peace to a family that has waited years or even decades for answers. For Lisa Anderson, and for all the others still waiting, we will never stop searching for the truth.